I have a couple questions. I'm not really enjoying the contrast. I see the question. Intellectually, I said, ooh, I'm having a breakthrough right now, but I hate it. So I'd like you to help me make that connection so I can actually appreciate it.
Do you like stagnation or motion forward?
Motion forward.
Do you like movement or stillness?
It depends where I am.
Do you like movement or absolute non-movement?
Movement.
Do you like faster or slower?
Faster.
Do you like more or less?
More.
Do you like becoming or declining?
Becoming.
Do you like exhilaration or contentment? These are comparative questions, but what do you prefer? Do you like boredom or stimulation?
Stimulation.
So you like movement. Do you see contrast? And this is an important distinction for you. Do you see contrast as one step forward, one step back? Do you see contrast as a tug of war? Or do you see question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer? Do you see it as question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer? Or is it question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer? Do you see it as problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution? Or problem, solution, problem, solution? This is an important distinction. In light of what we've just been talking about, which we haven't talked about with such clarity before, if it's a question and an answer and a question and an answer and a question and an answer, then it's delicious contrast, delicious movement, isn't it? So we know when you feel like you're stuck in contrast, that's not fun. When it feels like contrast is thwarting your motion forward. But contrast never thwarts your motion forward, because contrast always summons source energy's attention on the subject. And source energy always knows where you mean to be. So there's always a momentum. So what you're describing as contrast is your unwillingness to go toward the solution. That's all that it ever is. So contrast is not the problem. Not allowing movement toward the solution may be. And that's where that unworthy self-judgment, I shouldn't be here, that's when that kicks in and thwarts you. Yes?
Yes.
Well, that feels better already, doesn't it?
So far.
Yeah. So talk to us.
I came to this in one of the meetings I realized one of the reasons why I hate it so much is because of the source's love for me is so much. So when I block it, it creates that big wobble, and I feel really terrible.
So can we ask you a question? Do you think source is appreciating your contrast or pushing against it?
A lot more than I do.
A whole lot more. So you have already defined that your feeling of hating contrast or really not liking contrast is just because you and source have a different point of view about the very contrast, yes?
Yeah.
Because you're using it as an indictment against self or against someone else, and source isn't doing that.
Right.
So cut it out.
Yeah, how?
Well, it helps to understand. It helps to maybe understand the source's point of view. It's like our friend is saying, we're giving you an answer. You think he's getting it? Do you? Do you think he's getting it? Really good answer. Best answer we've ever given on this subject. Best answer ever. You get it? How about now? You got it now? Now do you have it? Now if we speak it louder, will you get it?
Maybe
you get
slower.
it? So it's a gradual thing, isn't it? It helps to study it and maybe apply some logic. Maybe think about other things that you felt contrast about that you began to feel good about. But you see, we don't want you to only feel good about contrast once you've broken through into the solution. We want you to feel good about the contrast because you often attract the contrasting experience because it's part of the motion forward too. Ooh. You've been making an indictment against yourself. Esther will say, I should know better than this. I should not, at this state of my understanding. For God's sake, Abraham flows through me. I should get this by now. I shouldn't be repeating this again. I should not be here again. And we say, that gets you nowhere. That decision that you're wrong is the worst decision that you can ever make until all of the universe, and you will never, ever, 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 no matter how many lifetimes you live and how many problems you face, you will never get your inner being to agree with you that you are wrong to be where you stand. Your physical world wants to do that because they're conditional in their love for you. Because they don't understand about alignment. They aren't considering their inner being. They need you to behave in precise ways so that they can look at you and feel good. So they've trained you into self-loathing or self-judgment or into hindering your own expansion by embracing the very contrast that makes it possible. Feels a little better in a general sense, doesn't it? So what's so bad about contrast? What is it that makes you feel so strongly about it? What is it about contrast?
My reaction to contrast.
And what is your reaction to the specific contrast that you've got on your mind? What is your reaction?
So I'm enjoying life, and then something happens that doesn't work, and I go, whoa, I'm a student of Abraham, and this should not happen, so I'm not accepting that moment. And then the spiral comes off and...
So it should not happen to you. Have you ever had a big question and then had that breakthrough of understanding and all that ripple of appreciation wash through you? Have you ever realized that without the contrasting question, the ripple of appreciation could not be there? Have you ever really enjoyed a meal so much that you just want to cry? You feel so blessed? Well, would you feel that way if all you ever did was eat? Or is the contrast of getting a little hungry important to the satisfaction of the meal? And so, could you experience anything? Could you even see without contrast? Could you hear without contrasting vibration? Contrast and variety are really the same thing. Can you soften the idea of contrast a little bit more to embrace it? So here's what you're talking about. Esther's been thinking a lot about this because there are a couple of experiences that are happening that she feels that way about. Not anger about it. She has a little more understanding because we're persistent in our conversation with her. But she doesn't like it nevertheless. And so she's been a little hard on herself. Anyone who's hard on themselves at all is too hard on themselves from our point of view. It's unnecessary and unproductive and not the way we are looking at you ever, ever, ever. And when you do, you always feel bad. So she's been thinking a lot about getting out ahead of things, because when the momentum of something unwanted sort of takes you further to a place than you want to be, your feeling of not being in better control is what you're beating up on yourself about mostly. So we've been saying to you, get out ahead of it. Get out ahead of it. When you can feel good, milk it. When you first wake up, try to stay there longer. Meditate every day. Sleep longer. Take better care of yourselves. Be nicer to yourself. Give yourself more of a buffer. Get better sea legs. In other words, give yourself some shock absorbers so that as contrast comes, you can embrace it and adore it rather than resist it and condemn yourself about it. These are the kinds of conversations we've been having with Esther. We said to her the other day in response to something, because she said she was trying to go back and replay something, wishing that she had done it differently than she had done it. And we said, most unproductive thing that you could ever do, because you can only be in your now. And if in your now you're beating yourself up about something that you've done before, then you're messing your now up, and that's the momentum that you're going to continue. So we said, with volume, out loud, to Esther, as she is putting her makeup on in the mirror, Esther! If you were back there, if you had that to do again, you would do exactly the same thing as you did before, because it was the path of least resistance then, and it is now. Ooh, shouting does help. Got Esther's attention. It was a very strong question within her. So now she's determined that she's going to get out there ahead of it. She's no longer going to mess up her now by second-guessing anything that she's done before. She's decided to accept that whatever it was, it's all right, and where she stands now is too. So, as we're talking about getting out ahead of it, meaning feel good as much as you can and milk it when you feel good, and when you don't feel good, try to change the subject, take a nap, do whatever you can in order to not encourage that momentum that you are not wanting. And so, a day or two or three or four or five, a week later, Esther is lying in bed, and she decides to watch television. Dun, dun, dun. And she's looking around, and she settles on a political channel and listens and listens and listens and listens and talks to them. They're not listening to her. And finally, in a feeling of contrast and sort of overwhelmment about what they don't understand, she turned off the television, out of sorts, not out ahead of it, responding to the contrast of the moment and taking it on herself and feeling it. And then she went to sleep. And while she slept, the momentum stopped, her energy cleared, like it always does, you lucky ducks. And when she awakened in the morning, she was in a good place for a moment. And then she thought, I'm going to brush my teeth and I'm going to meditate. I'm going to get out ahead of this. I'm going to stay out ahead of this. I'm going to maintain my positive momentum. So she brushed her teeth and she sat and she listened to the Get Into the Vortex meditation CD. Always brings her to a place of upliftment. And as she came out of meditation, she had a thought, a very clear thought, to look at the website about something. It had to do with the daily quote. And so she looked at the website, looked right at the daily quote, and there was something wrong with it. The quote was right for 2 sentences, and then it started in the middle of a sentence and changed the subject altogether. And right away, she called Mark. Hey, Mark, look at the website. There's something wrong with the quote. Whoa, he says. Yeah, I know what happened. What happened? Well, I'm putting the new ones in because Esther's been giving him new quotes. And he's getting them into the database and had just failed to clear the field before he put the new in. And so Esther, now she's sort of lost her momentum of inspiration. And now she starts to focus on the problem. How could this happen? This isn't the way I understood this to work. And Esther sort of picked a little fight. She picked a fight because she wanted to understand the problem. She wasn't basking in the perfection of the solution that she was guided to. She didn't even consider, hey, I was tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and found something right away. I was able to guide it right back into alignment. Instead, how does something like this happen? What do we need to do to avoid this problem from ever happening again? And then the mother lode of all resistance. Do you want me to do this? Now Esther can feel. She can feel what's happening. So then she sat to talk to us again. And we helped her, because she was not so far from it, to understand that she had a choice here. There was a solution that she had been guided to without even knowing she had a problem. She did not even know the problem exists. But because this is something that matters to her, she was guided to the solution and decided to focus upon the problem instead of upon the solution. Well, this is why we want her to understand that they're all tied together and that she can lean whichever direction that she wants to. So she brought herself back into alignment again. Back into alignment. So here's what we want you to feel. You can lean in the direction of solutions or problems. In other words, you can focus however you decide to focus. But the key word here is you have the ability to make the decision about which way you go. And if you've decided how you want to feel, those decisions get easier and easier. There's a tendency to be intoxicated with the problem because you want to save the world because you're in service. But that's not who you really are. You are intoxicated with motion forward. Don't beat the drum of the problem because it takes you out of the rhythm of the solution. But embrace problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution. It's all part of the motion forward. Just don't get fixated on saving the world.